Let the journey begin. Freddie M. is going to introduce our speaker tonight.
I'm an addict. My name's Freddie. Hi, family. God, y'all look good out there. First time I heard the name of our speaker tonight was the first convention I ever went to. It was Gretna 2 in Atlanta. And I was talking about Ron. This is my ninth Volunteer Regional Convention. When I first came around NA, we had a core of there was about 12 or 13 people, and I think 2 of them had a year. Went down to Atlanta that convention, and I heard about people having 5, 8, 9, and 10 years, and that just seemed impossible. I just couldn't even imagine it. First time I heard the speaker tonight, I heard him at the World Convention in New Orleans. I've heard his tapes. My sponsor and him served on the World Board together, and he shared some things with me that I don't know if he even remembers it, but talking about just getting clean, and that's all I thought when I came in there, just get the drugs out, then everything's going to be all right. I didn't know anything about growth. But also I heard that message of Narcotics Anonymous is also progressive. We get progressively better and mature. And I'm having a ball here, and I'm waiting for a great message from Dutch from New Jersey. This will give him a big Tennessee welcome.
Hi everybody, my name's Dutch and I'm an addict. And the reason that I say I'm an addict isn't because of really me, because I got clean before, like we used to identify ourselves as addicts, and I used to say my name's Dutch, I'm a dope fiend and I'm straight and this and that, and I was at a convention and the basic text had just come out, and there was a lot of talk about like the NA terminology and this and that, and this guy with 7 months came up to me and says, well, we don't care what you say, but you're an addict and we love you. And you know what? That struck with me because I just needed to surrender a little bit more to the program of Narcotics Anonymous. And I believe that surrendering to our literature and what's in it is important. So that's why I identify myself as an addict and just an addict. I believe that I was born with the disease of addiction. I don't think that I did X, Y, and Z amount of any substance and became an addict. And the reason I say that, because like when I was little, I can remember all the feelings of like isolation, alienation, before I ever picked anything up. I felt like I never belonged. I told my parents that I wasn't even their kid. I told them that they didn't love me. And, looking back through like all the inventories that we do through the process of recovery in Narcotics Anonymous, I can see that they just didn't love me the way that I thought that I should be loved. Or they didn't love me the way that my friends' parents loved them. So, of course, I had unrealistic expectations and I had conditions way before I ever picked up any kind of substance. But it took me a lot of years in this program to learn about that. I started using a substance at an early age and I liked it. And I liked what it did. It moved pain. And, not that my life was any worse than anybody else's, but to me it was my own pain. And as soon as I found out what these substances would do, the more that I would use them. I didn't need excuses. I didn't need reasons. I was good at being irresponsible. I was the type of person, if I couldn't win the race, I'd trip. And I was like, I heard at a meeting today, I was like that introverted egomaniac. And I can remember like when I was a little, and there was this guy, Cassius Clay, fighting, and I was like a little kid like this. And I'm looking in the mirror, I could whoop him. And that's the insanity. That's the insanity. I kept using and I kept getting put away as a teenager. I got put away enough that I became comfortable put away. And I was so lonely that I was the type of person, I would do things to get put away because I couldn't cut it on the outside. And I knew that I was different, and I had always felt different. You know, it was like my parents had like some crazy kind of marriage. My father was gone for 10 years, then he came back. And I had wet the bed up until I was a teenager. And I knew that other kids didn't. And I got ridiculed a lot, and I isolated a lot because of that. And so what had happened growing up was that I had become addicted to a way of life to move pain. And whatever it took to do that, I did it. And it didn't matter, you know, I wasn't like, I wasn't the type of person that had a job, went to a bar and went home to a spouse. I never had any relationships. I never had a job. And it's not that I did, this disease never allowed me to have anything good. I believe that the disease of addiction does nothing but destroy. And anything good that's in my life today is from this loving God that we got because I have a seat in Narcotics Anonymous. And what happened is as I began to grow up, I became good at destructive things. And I began to hang around with people that would co-sign all my actions. And that meant living a type of lifestyle where if I couldn't do anything good, you know, I would do something very destructive. And I became good at doing things that were destructive. And, you know, I kept getting put away and kept getting put away, and I believed that I was institutionalized as a teenager. And then when I was 20 years old, I went to the penitentiary, and it was like, you still couldn't tell me anything. Because I was the type of person, I had all the answers, and looking back, if you just let me go long enough, I would destroy anything. Anything, and all the people that came in my life got destroyed. And not that I wanted to, because I was the type of person, you know, I wanted you to like me, but I would do a lot of things that would cause me pain and cause a lot of destruction. And I thought I was right. That's part of this sickness, that I thought I was right. And you couldn't tell me any different. When I was in this penitentiary, I probably caught the break of my life. I went to a rehabilitation center. And this was in 1971. And I saw people that had been using that weren't using anymore. And I didn't believe that you could stop. And it wasn't, I had never heard the saying, once an addict, always an addict, but I knew that I wasn't going to live to be 23. And this was in 1971, I was 21. And what had happened was, when I was in this rehabilitation center, they used to make us go to these meetings to, I guess you got like points or something. But we used to have to like go to these meetings, and I would go to these meetings, but I never identified with the people at these meetings. They were older people that would come, and they would talk about drinking a liquid, and I couldn't identify with the lifestyle. And you know, there was like these, I always had defied authority, and these people were a lot older than me, so it was like they can't tell me nothing. And when I was in this rehab, a guy came from San Francisco, and he had a little white book, and it was said Narcotics Anonymous. And I got a hold of this book, and that gave me a lot of hope. I didn't know what to do with it. And I didn't know anything about any program. All I knew is that I was in this place, and that I was facing a lot of time, and that it was easier doing time here than it would have been doing time in a penitentiary. And as a result of that, I had gotten a little bit of hope that, well, maybe I could stop. But at the same time, I looked at the disease of addiction like, that's my problem. All I got to do is stop using a substance and everything's going to be all right. And we started having Narcotics Anonymous meetings. And I can tell you, this was in Norristown, Pennsylvania, right outside of this rehabilitation center. And it was in 1972. And we would go to this place, and we tried to get meetings, you know, where we thought we could get meetings. Nobody would let us have a meeting. There was a church with a predominantly black congregation that told us that, yeah, you can have a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. And that's where we had the meeting. And I can remember going there, there were 6 people there, and we had a book that was big, and we had this little white book, and it was therapy. I mean, it was all like, well, how do you feel, and can you deal with it? And like now that we was out of this place, everybody was into this stuff, because therapists talk with their hands and shit, you know what I mean? And it's like, everybody wanted to be like the top therapist. And we didn't know anything about having a meeting. We didn't know anything about any structure. And that was how it started. We didn't know anything about the steps. And that's just, for a lot of years, we didn't know anything about the steps. But this is how I got introduced to Narcotics Anonymous. And what had happened was, these people on the outside, they told me to come back. And nobody had ever told me to come back anyplace. And I can remember wanting to go to these meetings, wanting to see these people, not knowing what recovery was about, but knowing that these people told me to come back, and it was like I could say anything, I could damn well do anything, and they kept telling me to come back. And this was like pretty neat. And what had happened was more people started to come to these meetings. And some of us had got together and said, well, what should we do? And, like somebody made coffee, somebody made this, and I'll tell you how NA grew back then. We started other meetings out of resentment. If anybody can identify with that, that's how NA grew. So we would go to different places, and we would find a place that would start meetings, that would let us have meetings, and we went into Philadelphia, and the same thing happened there. People with a predominantly black church congregation would allow us to have a meeting there. White people didn't want to have anything to do with us, because they knew that we was going to rob their collections, and we was going to, just do anything, and they stereotyped us as addicts. And not only that, and like if you're from a area and you got a lot of time and there wasn't a lot of people when you first came around, you can identify some of the struggles that you had. It seems like competing with another fellowship, And what happened was, we wouldn't go to these places all dressed up in a coat and tie, and none of us had jobs. We would have blue jeans on, flannel shirts. A lot of us had long hair and beards, and we would say like, "Yo, motherfucker, you gonna let us have a meeting?" And I can remember when we didn't have any social skills. Nobody had a job. Nobody knew nothing. So what happened? We had like this H&I commitment, and what it was in a county jail, and I had a lot of friends that had been sentenced, right? So I said, well, we're going to go get them all out, and we're going to tell them like they don't have to use substances anymore. And this was in 1973, and they kicked us out. Because we demanded coffee and donuts. It's like, don't you know what we're doing? We're saving, like this and that, and like, we still had the attitude like the world owed us a living. Isn't it great that we're not using? And they told us not to come back. And it took a few years to understand how to carry a message. And at that time, I really didn't know what the message was, and I probably spread more of a mess than I did a message for a lot of years. But I always believed that my heart was in the right place, and I believe that that's the reason that I'm able to still be clean to death. I can't say that I ever honestly had a motive to hurt anybody in these rooms. And probably one of my biggest defects was my need to be right, which would cause like a lot of controversy, because what happened when you have more time than other people, you know, you got to go out of your way to prove that you're right. And it's that ego and that pride stuff, and that nobody could tell me nothing. And it got to such a point where it almost killed me, because I didn't have a sponsor for 8 years. And I'll tell you why, because I thought it was like the person with the most clean time was right. And there was a couple people that had a little bit more time than me, but I didn't like them. So I made sure that I hung around with people that had less time than me. And I would get into like the sick dependencies of like, oh yeah, Dutch is right, you know, we better ask Dutch. So I had like kind of like become like this emperor of the East. And, you know, it was a real, a strong personality, and it wasn't, it was, a lot of it was, as long as I was right. And it wasn't, I can look back and see that sometimes I had my best interest, more primary than the interests of the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous. And, but you know, I believe that I was right. And this is where, just because you have a little bit of clean time doesn't mean that somebody with less time can't come up to you and tell you, you're fucked up. And that's what it took, you know, to like make me more teachable. I was sponsoring a lot of people, and they was knowing that I was full of shit, you know. And I would tell them, like, you don't get high till your balls fall off, and you get involved in service, and you just stay involved. I looked at recovery as like tag. As long as you was at a meeting, at an NA social function, or involved in service, you weren't going to use. And when you wasn't at that, as long as you was hanging out at somebody's house, you weren't going to use. And that's what I looked at recovery as. And I must have read in that little white book, we must abstain in order to recover, I don't know how many times. And today it's different. To me, that tells me that there's a difference between recovery and abstinence. And I remember when I did get a sponsor, and he told me to write out the steps. And I couldn't believe that he told me to write the steps. You know, and I went through all the changes, like, this guy's going to judge me, who does he think he is, and, you know, it's not in any of our literature that you got to do this, and, since I have more time than he did, you know, I don't have to do it. So, what happened when I couldn't take any more pain, and that's what I did, you know, if you're not willing to learn, pain will make you teachable. And if you don't let the pain make you teachable, I believe the only thing that's left is jails, institutions, and death. And what had happened was I went out to California because I had gone out to the World Service Conference to make sure that they was running NA the way I thought they should. And they weren't. And they had told me that this guy had experienced the steps. And, you know, right away when somebody confronts you with that, I mean, I figured, like, these people were telling me this because they knew that I hadn't, like, worked the steps. And, like, who are they? But they were right. And, so I watched this guy, and he was, like, policy chair at the time. And what happens when you're policy chair, you're kind of, like, in control of some things. And I had watched and watched and watched and watched, and then finally I asked this guy, you know, I didn't ask him if he would sponsor me, because if he had said no, I couldn't handle rejection. But I asked him if he would handle me. Because if he did say no, I didn't ask him to sponsor me. So that's how it happened. And then I didn't call him for like 6 months, but I went back east and I told everybody, yeah, I got a sponsor. You know, to give me a little more credibility. And then when I couldn't take any more pain, I would call them up and I would say, like, what do I got to do? And, this is when he told me that, like I would have to write. And that's what he did. And, so what had happened was, without me knowing it, I had started to respect another human being. Because I was the type of person, I never respected anything. And I can look at it back, I really didn't respect Narcotics Anonymous the way I respect it today from my first 8 years. And the relationship that I have with my sponsor today, for a long time it was learning, and now we're friends. But this man taught me about Narcotics Anonymous. And along with this man comes his wife. And I learned about what the program of Narcotics Anonymous was. As much as I thought I knew, I really didn't know. And I was so full of denial and self-deception, I was really lost. And what had happened, I knew that I was really ragged because I would go to meetings and I would kick out like a lot of heavy stuff. And all these people would come up to me and say, oh, you're so honest. Wow, you're this, you're a heavy hitter, you're that. And I would leave the meeting and do the exact same thing that I talked about. Very, very secretive. Very, very sneaky. And I couldn't stop doing what I was doing. And I used to believe that there was no answers for people like me. I knew that I didn't belong in another fellowship because I went there and they would read things in the beginning of the meeting. They would say some of us have grave emotional and mental disorders. They're unconstitutionally incapable of being honest. Well, that was me. So I knew that I didn't belong. And I didn't know how to get honest. And I believe I had to steal my honesty because I'd get courage from other people talking about themselves and say, yeah, that's me. Yeah, that's me. Yeah, that's me. And I had always had a problem with this thing of more clean time than anybody else. Because I felt like I had to go to meetings all the time and say something that's going to be profound. And then really what it was like a waste of time because I had gotten to the point that I thought I was like this mother hen in Narcotics Anonymous and I had to do all this stuff for all these people. And you know what? There was nothing left for Dutch. Dutch did not know how to go for Dutch. I didn't know how to ask for help. My ego was so blown. I didn't know how to tell somebody that I was hurting. I didn't know how to tell anybody that I was lonely. And I got these people are looking at me and they say, wow, you're 8-9 years clean. What's it like? And I was afraid if I told them, they would go out and get loaded. So when I began the process of working the steps, and to me that's what the program of Narcotics Anonymous is. It's not us. We're the fellowship. The program of Narcotics Anonymous is just the 12 steps and the 12 traditions. And anything other than that is conversation. Do you know what I mean? The program of Narcotics Anonymous is the 12 steps and the 12 traditions. And what had happened when I started writing these steps, and it was when I was in a lot of pain, at first I wrote down, and I can remember this, I wrote down what I thought sounded good. And he said to write them again. And then I wrote down what I thought he wanted to hear. And that's kind of like people pleasing. And he said, write them again. How's this guy know? He don't know me. He never spent that much time with me. So what had happened was I spent a couple, 2-3 weeks out in California at their house. And these people took me in their house as crazy as I was. So I knew that they weren't playing with a full deck because they took a lunatic like me in their house. And you know what they did? They didn't do nothing but love me. And you know what? I couldn't handle that. I didn't know how to handle people just loving me for me. And I would tell these people, I would tell them sick things on purpose to keep them away. Well, I'm going to tell them this, and I know they're going to send me home. And they would say, oh, we love you, we love you, we love you. And then I would still have like some kickers in the back of my head, you know, like, well, okay, tomorrow I'll hit them with this. And I would tell them, and we love you, we love you, we love you. What do you want to eat? And I can remember like going through a lot of changes, just being able to handle somebody loving me for me. Because to me, honesty is without disguise. And for a lot of years in these rooms, I had a disguise on, of one sort or another. It may have been a service commitment. It may have been being too involved in something. It may be helping too many people. It may be overworking. You know, anything that I thought might look good to like keep y'all off of me, you know, that's what I would use. And that's just what it was, using. But when I began to write these steps the way that I felt that they were, something happened. And I can remember that after I started writing these steps, my life got worse. And I would write these steps, and I would make a lot of phone calls, you know, and I was using a sponsor for the first time. And what happened, my business was going bad, my marriage was breaking up, and I felt like I was losing control. And I remember Sydney, the lady that's going to speak tomorrow night, she told me, every answer to every question you have is in the program in Narcotics Anonymous. And I'm saying, like, how do they know that? They don't even know what questions I got. How do they know this? Well, you know what? They've been there before. And I had put a lot of time in, but I didn't know how to work the program in Narcotics Anonymous. And I had run out of time. I couldn't take on any more pain. And it was, I'll do anything. And that was the surrender that I needed. I had that surrender when I first came into Narcotics Anonymous. And then I got all caught up with putting on a fireman's hat and a butterfly net and trying to chase anybody into these rooms. Because the more people that was in NA, the safer I felt. But we didn't have anything to do anything with the steps. We used to work the steps as a whole group. And never with a sponsor. And that's changed. You know, the way Narcotics Anonymous was and the way it is and the way it's always going to be, NA is always going to keep changing. And I believe with this loving and caring God that we got, it's going to keep getting better. And there used to be a time in NA where like people didn't want us and people wouldn't accept us and people wouldn't have us at meetings. Now it's 1991, and if we go into a town and we want to have a meeting and we don't let it, we'll burn your fucking town down. And so what happens as a result of that, NA grew, there was a lot of people in there, Dutch lost himself in the shuffle. I got a sponsor, and I began to work the steps, and the way that I began to work the steps was through the writings. And the way that I worked the first step for a lot of years was I looked at recovery as just not using. And there comes a point in time in your recovery where that's not enough. And I didn't know that. See, because I thought that I was going to these meetings and I was protected by the shield of NA. And that it was just enough not to use. And it was killing me. And I can look at you people tonight and tell you that change is harder for me than it was to stop using. It was much easier for me to put down a substance than it is to change. And I went through all the masquerades of I'm protected by the cloak of NA, I can do anything. All I got to do is hit a meeting. All I got to do is get involved with this. And I've held every service position from a GSR to a board of trustee. And I was so crazy that I was probably at some board of trustee meetings where they didn't want me there. Because I was nuts. The way that I look at step one today is that when my life gets unmanageable, it's usually because I'm trying to manipulate or control things. And through not working with a sponsor and through the denial of this disease that lives 24/7, it gets worse. And I can't see it. But what I can start to see is that when I'm hurting people, I can do something about it. There used to be a time that I couldn't do anything about it, and I had to let the destruction run its course. And today I look at, we admit, it starts with me and my sponsor, we admit what? Anything that's a secret. See, because I tried to control my using, I tried to control my greed, I tried to control my lust, I tried to control going after money, property, and prestige, and the more that I tried to do it, the more unmanageable I got. And the more less than I felt as a person. And I didn't know anything about, I didn't even know what the word self-esteem meant. I didn't know none of that stuff. When I came to NA, my vocabulary primarily consisted of who's holding, where can I cop, who's got the best stuff. And when I came in here and they started, talking about self, I didn't understand it. And my first thing was to run from it. But that's how I look at step one today. We admit our secrets. And it starts with a sponsor. And then I get enough courage from talking with my sponsor that I can tell you all about it. And that's the beginning of we. That's the concept of we. I can't work this program alone. I tried and it almost killed me. And I fixed on anything I could not to work the steps. And I can stand up here to tell you tonight, I couldn't make enough money. There wasn't enough sex. There wasn't enough things to fill the hole. But I can tell you, when I'm helping somebody else, it fills the hole. And you can't put a price tag on that. So what happened, I didn't know that I was working the first step at first. Some things were happening in my life that all of a sudden I wasn't trying to control anymore. And I couldn't understand that. But that was just loving and caring God starting to work in my life. And then when I would admit these secrets, I had a lot of secrets. I had not only all the years out in the street and put away, I had all my years in the rooms. And I did things in the rooms worse than I did when I was in the street. But what had happened was I had started to realize and internalize the steps that something good was happening in my life. And in the second step, I used to think that the only insanity was using. And for me today, the insanity could be having to get the last word in. Do you know how much energy you put in having to be right and having to say the last word? Relationships are tough. Tough. But you know what? To me, and believe me, I've rumbled with relationships. Rumbled with them. A healthy relationship means that I'm getting out of the way. See, because I'm so self-centered and I'm so full of fear and I feel so inadequate and I feel so insecure. And from the beginning I know that it's not going to work. So I'll run with it as long as I can and then self-destruct. And not know how to stop it. And you know what? I go to a lot of meetings and I don't hear anything about that. I've never gone to a meeting and when I say a topic discussion, like what are the qualities of being a good man? What are the qualities of being a good husband? And I know for me, after I got married, I had to give up my bachelorhood because see, my first marriage, I did what I wanted. And that took its course and that destroyed, and looking back, I'm glad it was destroyed. And even when I got married again, you need to change. And I needed to change. And what had happened was, the insanity would get worse, the self-deception would come in, and I wouldn't know how to get out of it. And what happens is we learn from our experience and we learn from other people. And the insanity in the second step today is totally different than what it was when I came in 18 years ago. And I look at that I can be restored to sanity, by going to a meeting. I can be restored to sanity by calling a sponsor. I can be restored to sanity by reading literature before I react. For me, sometimes working a second step is not doing anything. Every cell in my body wants me to act out and get crazy. And the thing is, I don't know what the results are going to be if I don't react. But I do know what the results are going to be if I react. It's going to be destruction. And to me, the absence of destruction is where this loving God comes in our life. And that's where there's a power greater than me. And it can be an addict with 2 days. I'll lay some heavy shit on an addict with 2 days. It doesn't matter. I work this program for me. I don't design how I'm going to recover for anybody. And that's how I look at the second step today. A lot different than when I did. And then in the third step, I used to think it was the God step. And making a decision. What addict can make a decision? I couldn't make a decision, but me and my sponsor could. And I used to think, before I hooked into what the concept of the whole third step was, I used to is this God's will? Oh, this is God's will, I'm going to do it. But I'm going to be good today. I'm in enough pain, I'm going to do God's will. And do what I think is God's will. But I know for me, I'm an addict. God's will for me is to continue with the steps. I don't know. I'm married. I finish concrete for a living. I live in New Jersey. I don't know if that's God's will. I do know it's God's will for me to continue with the steps because I'm an addict. And there's a way of life laid out for me if I want to move the pain. See, because I don't know how to live life without pain. The steps teach me to live this life that we have without any kind of pain. And my whole life I was used to pain. And if I didn't have any, I would create some. Thinking that I was doing the right thing. But what I learned in this third step was turning everything over to God. And this is where I hooked into the thing of, because I'm a member of Narcotics Anonymous, there's a loving and caring God that cares enough about Dutch and doesn't ask me to love him back. Because this loving and caring God knows that I'm not able to love anyone yet. And in all my relationships, I can look, if God's not first, I'm going to use and abuse it. And that's not just in my marriage. That's in any relationship with anybody. Because right away comes conditions, comes expectations. And in this third step, this loving and caring God loves Dutch and doesn't ask him to love him back because he knows that I'm not able to. Because I have some wreckage of the past that I got to get rid of. I got some wreckage of the present that I got to work on that blocks me from this spirit. I'm not able to get out of the way. And what happened after that was I had no fear. I remember the night that it happened, I got goosebumps. I called my sponsor. I said, is this what it's supposed to be like? I had no fear for doing an inventory. Because this loving and caring God loved Dutch and didn't even ask me to love him back. So I did the inventory the way that my sponsor said. And I did my fifth step with a sponsor. And I'll tell you what happened when I did my fifth step. He started asking me questions right in the middle of it. And it was like, man, what the fuck are you doing? Why don't you just let me get my shit off? Because I've already started. Let me finish reading this. Let me dump. Let me get it over with, and then if you want to talk to me, good. But you know what? I could write about the attitudes and behavior, but I couldn't see them. I saw what was causing me pain, and once again it took a we to get to what the exact nature of Dutch's wrongs were. And by my sponsor talking to me, we came to find out what the exact nature of my wrongs was. I couldn't do it by myself. I had tried to do a fifth step all across this country. A little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, a little bit there. I took a newcomer to the racetrack when I had 4 years clean, and I felt guilty for taking this guy to a racetrack. So I went into the bathroom and I got a paper towel and I started writing down all the bad things I did in my life. And then I told him, I said, look, we're going to go to a retreat, and I got to give this stuff up. And I got to work my fifth step in Narcotics Anonymous. So I go there, and I'm not Catholic, but this guy tells me that to get absolution, I got to do these Hail Marys and novenas and stuff like that. And I felt clean. I left the retreat and did the exact same thing that I had just read to this priest. And I didn't understand how that could happen. And that's between the fifth and sixth step, the rock and the hard place. Recovery's action. If I had to sum up what the program of Narcotics Anonymous was in one word, it's action. You cannot just go to meetings and get recovery. You cannot just pray and get recovery. You cannot hang around with people with more time than you and get recovery. It takes action. You'll get out of it what you put into it. And I'm a dope fiend. I want to get the most for the least. So I want to know from somebody's experience, what is the least amount of work I got to do to get the most out of this? And I remember Sidney telling me, you got to have faith. You know what? Fuck faith. Tell me. I didn't know. But I wanted to know. I wrote on my defects for a long time. And you know what? Sidney told me the other night, I'm not done. I think I'm done. More will be revealed. I bet I write. But what had happened was, I used to think that the words entirely ready was right in the middle of the steps. So I would count all the words this way to entirely. And I would count all the words this way to ready, because I thought that they were the exact 2 words in the middle of the steps. And they're not. So don't waste your time trying to do it. What made me entirely ready was, when I wrote about these defects, I wrote what my life was like with them, and what my life could be like without them. And when I saw the creep that I was, and the person that I could be, that's what made me entirely ready. Because I would always go to meetings and say, yeah, I'm entirely ready to have some of them removed. Well, when you write on all of them and you see the type of person that you still are without a substance, and you got the records of your past gone, and you're still creating records in the present, it hurts. And when you got 10 or 11 years clean, it really kicks your ass. And I didn't know how to stop. And I would be as honest as I could, and I still could not stop doing the destructive action. And then I wrote about step 7, and the way that I look at 6 and 7 today is step 6 is like a car with 4 flat tires, and step 7 is trying to drive it. Defects can be removed. Defects can be removed. And we need to become entirely ready, and that's working with a sponsor. And you know what? To me, it had to be a little more than just doing the writing. I didn't know what defects of character were. The biggest defect of character that I got, and probably still today, is I've hated myself so much for the things that I've done my whole life. I would overcompensate for anything just so that you would talk to me, that you would like me. And I would compromise anything that I believed in just so that it would take away the pain and loneliness and take away my fear. And you know what? Next month I'll be clean 19 years. I still struggle with that. And I mean, it kicks my ass. And I don't like myself when I do it. And that, I need to stay teachable. I like to wake up every day with a clean slate. I like people to teach me things. I like to learn things. I like to be the best person that I can be, and I like to not be in pain. And I used to think that I deserved all this pain because I was a victim of my own creation, but I had done so many things wrong, I deserved it. No, that's not what this loving and caring God wants. And I figured anybody that broke all the commandments is going to live in some kind of hell. And that's not what this God wants. I mean, this God in NA loves us. I mean, it's like go for the brass ring every day. It's not just go to meetings and this and that. I mean, it's living life to the fullest. I don't want to like come into Narcotics Anonymous, get clean, and die. I know how to die. I want to live. I want to live the fullest, best life that I can, but I can't do it alone. I need people. I need you people in these rooms. I need my sponsor. And I need my like intimate circle that tells me when I'm full of shit. I need that. When I wrote out my list in step 8, I went to my sponsor and I said, you know what, there's 3 people on this list that I can't make amends to because if I do, they're going to kill me. And you know, whoever wrote these steps out was pretty slick. Because, you know, by the time you get to the 8th step, they know that you've been through enough already that you're really not going to turn back. So what had happened, he said, if your recovery depended on this, would you be willing? And that's the key word in this step, willingness. And right away I said, yeah. So because I had willing and because my sponsor had made me aware that no matter what, I would be willing, I went and I made the amends. And it freed me up. To me, it's a privilege to be able to make amends. And I used to think it was never a privilege to say I'm sorry and mean it. But when I do make an amends, I have to mean it. Because my whole life, I'm sorry meant fuck you. And that's not what it means in the steps of Narcotics Anonymous. When I say I'm sorry, I'm truly sorry, I have to mean it. And if I'm not there, I have to get my heart there. Because I don't want to hurt another person. The 10th step I used to write, and then I had stopped. And then I was going through a lot of problems. And my sponsor said, you know what? You think you're taking everything on. Why don't you write out your inventory again and see what you're doing each day? Because, see, I'm the type of person, if something's going wrong in my life, I did it. I did it. Yeah, I did it. And I would take all the blame, and I would take on all the guilt, and I would take on all the shame, because my whole life I was guilt and shame-based for the things that I did. And I'm not there today. So if I write out a 10-step, I can see how I live my life today. And if I need any tending to, I can take care of it before I sleep. And the 11th step takes us to God. And I used to try to figure out, what the hell is a conscious contact? You know, and I would go to libraries, what is a conscious contact? And I would try to look it up in the book because I wanted to be right. And I never found anything in any book that told me what a conscious contact was. And a conscious contact to me today is an ever-present knowing that God's in my life. And I get that from doing the right thing and from prayer and meditation. And for a long time, I always thought more through prayer than I did meditation because I thought that meditation stuff was in the 60s. And you know what? My meditation today is I get by myself, I think of one word, I think of pretty things, flowers, nature, and I concentrate on one word. And I zero in on it. And I put all my focus into that. And what that does, if I'm going through an uncomfortable time, it lifts me over the pain. And it gets me to where I got to go. And the way that I look at this is that the first 11 steps take you to God. God's the ultimate fix. And the 12th step is to tell people about it. And what that is that this loving and caring God that we got in NA, He knew in step 3 that I couldn't love anything or anybody. But it's the 12th step, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. The prior 11 steps, I can love another human being. And even today, that's not easy for me to say. But this loving and caring God that we got in NA, through these 11 steps, and God works through people, through my sponsor, and through my friends, and through these rooms, knows that I'm able to love a human being. And the best way that I know how to do it is to carry the message of Narcotics Anonymous. I mean, my way of loving somebody is to possess them. The way of Narcotics Anonymous of loving somebody is to set them free. The way that I live my life is totally the opposite of what the program of Narcotics Anonymous is. And by that's how I paid this God back. By loving other people, by helping them, by carrying the message. The worst things that have ever happened to me in my life, the most painful experiences in my life, I've been able to use those experiences to help another human being. And usually it's an addict. And I'll tell you what coming to Narcotics Anonymous did for somebody like me. It gave my life some meaning. Because my whole life I lived and I did things to give my life meaning, and it was like fool's gold. It never lasted. And by coming into Narcotics Anonymous and living these steps, it's made my heart full and it's given my life some meaning. And I still call my sponsor. I'm still in touch with my sponsor. I love my sponsor. And I have no shame in saying that today. I tell you what, 8-9 years ago I couldn't tell you I love another man because I might think you think I'm funny. So what? For that experience to happen to me, and to where I grew up feeling such worthless as a person, and to have some meaning in my life today, is a miracle. That's the miracle that we have in Narcotics Anonymous. And it's not a thing of, you come in here and you get this thing real easy. Most people don't make it. Today, I'm very grateful that I'm grateful. And when we have meetings and they bring up the topic grateful, that's all I say. I'm just grateful that I'm grateful. I've never seen a person go out and get loaded that was grateful. I've never seen a person stay lonely. I've never seen a person stay in self-pity helping another human being. I've never seen a person caught in the traps of money, property, and prestige stay in it when they started to live this program. And this disease is so treacherous, it will do anything to stop you from living this program. And they talk about this vigilance. You know, it's not vigilantes. There's vigilance. And that's looking out and being my brother's keeper. Primarily my brother's keeper. I don't sponsor any women. You know, and I just say that, that's my experience. To me, there's enough things that men and women can do besides sponsoring each other. I only go to Narcotics Anonymous. That's my program of recovery. And the whole thing is like when I come to Narcotics Anonymous and somebody asks you, what do you do there? It's hard to tell them, like, I go there because it gives my life some meaning. I know who I am today. I know what I am today. And I can keep getting better. I'm not anywhere near where I would like to be. But I can't believe that I was the same person that I was 19 years ago when I came in. And I came into Narcotics Anonymous 22 years old. You people are my family. I'm growing up in Narcotics Anonymous. And you know what? I come here and I didn't know how to live. I'm not the type of person you could send me to prison and rehabilitate me. I don't know how to live my life. I need to be taught. And I need to love and I need to trust people to teach me. And that's what I get in these rooms. When I came down here to Tennessee, it was pretty cool because like we drove down here at night and when the sun came up there was like this smoke coming off of the water. And it was really pretty because where I live there's no hills. I live at sea level and there's no mountains, no hills or nothing. So this is kind of like a trip for me down here. And I had heard about the Southern hospitality and they're right. You all have been really nice. And this is like the first time that I've ever spent like a Thanksgiving. You know, like Thanksgiving would be like you go to your grandmother's when she was living, you go to your mother. You know, you got to do like the family thing. It don't get no better than this. It really doesn't. And I can tell you today, the more that I come to these things, the less that I'm apt to retrogress back through the steps. Because I don't want to be the type of person that doesn't have a spiritual awakening. I don't want to be the type of person that doesn't have a conscious contact and doesn't pray. I don't want to be the type of person that takes your inventory and not mine. I don't want to be the type of person that doesn't make amends. I don't want to be the type of person that isn't willing to make amends. I don't want to be the type of person that continually comes up short. I don't want to be the type of person that's full of defects. Once again, I don't want to be the type of person that has secrets. And I don't want to be the type of person where it's easier to take your inventory than it is mine. I don't want to be the type of person that can't make a decision. I don't want to be the type of person that's insane. I don't want to be the type of person that's in control. And I damn sure don't want to get loaded. And that's what happens when we go backwards. After you're in here a while, it isn't the substance that takes you out. It's everything else. And I believe the more that I live this way, the less I have the fear. And I can't do it myself. If I have anything that I can tell anybody, I've been clean a while. I can't live the program of Narcotics Anonymous by myself. I need to stay teachable. I need to be able to love people, and I need to be able to be loved back. And I need to be able to do the right thing for the right reasons. Because before, if I did the right things, I had a motive. And it's just simply wanting to be the best person that I can be. That's what the program NA is about. If I wasn't an addict, I wouldn't need 12 steps to learn how to live. I'm an addict. And this loving and caring God put enough people in my life and gave me 12 steps. Okay, Dutch, if you want to know how to live, Here it is. And every time I come to a meeting or I come to a convention, the one thing that I get out of it is go for it. Because my whole life I used to just settle. And I would compromise. And because I felt less than, I didn't think that I belonged. And today, there ain't no other place I'd rather be than here. And I want to tell you all from the bottom of my heart, my most precious possession is my membership to Narcotics Anonymous. Because without that, nothing matters. And if you're new and you're wondering like, man, what the fuck is he talking about? Because you're here, let us love you till you can love yourself. Just get out of the way. And I didn't know how to get out of the way, and I needed you people to tell me how to do it. And when I could get me out of the way, the destruction stopped. A loving and caring God could come in my life, and I could stop spreading the mess, and I could learn to start spreading the message. And that's the only reason I'm here. To me, that's the only reason I'm alive. I used to think, when I came to NA, my first thing was I wanted to get on welfare. Then I wanted to win the lottery ticket. Then I wanted to harem with women. And you know what? I got a fucking disease and never enough. This is enough. Coming here is enough. Narcotics Anonymous, and Sidney, you were right. It has every answer to every question that I ever had. I love you all. Thanks.
Thank you for experience, strength, and hope, Dutch. We love you. Freddie M's going to read just for today, and we're going to stand and close.